Every family has a role they expect you to play. In mine, my role was simple: be perfect, be patient, and never ever cause a scene. For 9 years, I played that role beautifully, until the day I found out the man I had been protecting didn't deserve protection at all. My name is Mira. I was 34 years old, and for almost a decade, I was known in my husband's family as the perfect daughter-in-law. Not because I tried to be perfect, but because I genuinely believed our family was worth being good for. I married Arjun when I was 25. He came from a large, close-knit family, the kind where every festival meant 30 people crammed into one house, where his mother cooked for everyone with her own hands, where his father still gave blessings before every meal. I loved that about them. I came from a smaller family, and marrying into the Malhotra household felt like gaining an entire tribe of people who cared about me. His mother, whom I called Amma, treated me like her own daughter from the very first day. She would call me every morning just to ask if I'd eaten breakfast. She defended me fiercely whenever any relative made a passing comment about anything: my cooking, my job, my clothes. In a family full of opinions, Amma was my shield. Arjun's father, whom everyone respected deeply in their community, used to say at every family gathering, "Mira brought peace into this house." I used to blush every time he said that. I took pride in being the reason for harmony in a house full of strong personalities. Arjun worked in real estate, managing properties and closing deals across the city. He was well-liked, charming, always the center of attention at family events, always the one telling stories that made everyone laugh. People often told me how lucky I was to have married someone so full of life. For years, I agreed with them completely. But here's something I've learned the hard way. A man can be wonderful in front of a crowd and be an entirely different person behind closed doors. And an even harder truth, a man who charms an entire family can sometimes hide the ugliest secrets in exactly the same rooms where he receives the most love. It started small, the way most betrayals do. Arjun began helping a family friend named Kavita with her property paperwork. Kavita was the daughter of Amma's closest friend, someone who had grown up practically as part of our extended family. She had recently gone through a difficult divorce and needed help managing an inherited property. It made sense that Arjun, being in real estate, would step in to help. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? Kavita called me Babhai, sister-in-law. She attended our family functions. She sat beside Amma at every gathering, laughing about old memories from their childhoods together. But somewhere in the process of helping, something changed between them. I don't know the exact date it happened. I only know the exact date I found out. It was almost 2 years after Arjun started helping Kavita with her property. 2 years of increased meetings. 2 years of him staying out later finalizing paperwork. 2 years of me trusting completely, because trust was the foundation this entire family had built with me from day one. And it was Amma, the woman who loved me like her own daughter, who accidentally became the one to hand me the very first piece of the truth. It happened on an ordinary Sunday afternoon. Amma had invited the whole family over for lunch, as she did every second Sunday of the month. The house was full of the usual warmth, the smell of her cooking, children running between rooms, uncles arguing playfully about cricket scores. I was in the kitchen helping Amma prepare dessert when she said something that seemed completely harmless in the moment. "You know, Beta," she said, stirring a pot of kheer, "I'm so relieved Arjun has been helping Kavita through all this. She told me last week how much it means to her, having someone she can lean on so completely, especially late at night when she feels most alone after the divorce. I remember smiling and nodding, thinking nothing of it. Family helping family, that's what we did. But then Amma added one more sentence, almost as an afterthought, still stirring the pot, completely unaware of the weight her words carried. She said Arjun even stayed over last Tuesday until almost 2 a.m. just talking with her, helping her feel less lonely. Such a good boy, my son. I froze. Because Tuesday night, Arjun had told me he was stuck at a client dinner that ran late, and he'd come home around 11:30 p.m., tired and quiet, going straight to bed without much conversation. Amma had no idea what she had just revealed. To her, it was simply proof of her son's kindness. To me, it was the first thread of a lie that would eventually unravel an entire tapestry. I didn't say anything that day. I smiled, finished the dessert, served lunch, laughed at the right moments during the usual family jokes. But inside, something had shifted. A small, cold seed of doubt had been planted, and once planted, doubt doesn't stay small for long. That night, I lay awake beside Arjun, replaying every late client dinner, every extra property meeting, every night he came home just slightly too calm, too rehearsed in his explanations. 9 years of trust doesn't disappear in one conversation. But 9 years of trust can start cracking with just one sentence spoken by someone who had no idea they were even revealing a secret. Over the following weeks, I began paying attention in ways I never had before. Not out of suspicion exactly, more like a quiet, careful curiosity. I noticed Arjun's phone was always face down now, something he'd never done before. I noticed he stepped out to take calls more frequently, standing just far enough away that I couldn't hear the conversation clearly. I noticed that whenever Kavita's name came up at family gatherings, he would quickly change the subject or make a joke to move the conversation elsewhere. None of it was proof, all of it was pattern. And patterns, when you finally start noticing them, are almost impossible to unsee. I decided I needed something concrete, not because I wanted to destroy anything, but because after 9 years of loving this family, I refused to let doubt live in my head without an answer. I owed myself clarity, one way or another. The answer came from the last place I expected. Kavita's own younger sister, Divya, who I had always been close with. Divya and I had developed our own friendship over the years, separate from her sister Kavita, separate from the family dynamics entirely. We would meet occasionally for coffee, talk about our lives, complain about work, laugh about nothing in particular. She was younger than me by about 6 years, but we understood each other in a way that transcended the age gap. 3 weeks after Amma's innocent slip about Arjun staying until 2 a.m., Divya called me, asking to meet urgently. Her voice on the phone sounded different, hesitant, careful, like someone carrying something too heavy to hold alone any longer. We met at a quiet cafe away from our usual neighborhood spots. She looked nervous the entire time, stirring her coffee without drinking it, avoiding eye contact for the first few minutes. Finally, she said, "Mira, I need to tell you something, and I need you to know I've been struggling with whether to say anything for months." My heart started racing, but I stayed calm. "Tell me," I said simply. "It's about Kavita and Arjun," she said, and then she stopped, as if the words themselves were too heavy to release completely. "I know they've been spending time together for the property," I said carefully, giving her an opening, testing how much she already knew, how much she was prepared to say. Divya shook her head slowly. It's not just the property anymore, Mira. It hasn't been just the property for a long time. She told me everything she knew. She had seen messages on Kavita's phone by accident one evening, messages between Kavita and Arjun that were nowhere close to professional. She had seen photos too. Not explicit, but intimate in a way that left no room for misunderstanding, dinner dates in dimly lit restaurants, quiet late-night walks, moments that clearly weren't about property paperwork. Divya said she had confronted Kavita privately a month earlier, begging her sister to end whatever this was, reminding her of the family bond, reminding her that Mira, that I had done nothing but love and support this entire family for years. Kavita's response, according to Divya, had been cold and dismissive. Sometimes things just happen. Mira doesn't need to know everything. That sentence hit me harder than almost anything else in this entire story. Because it revealed something important. This wasn't a mistake made in a single weak moment. This was a decision, made repeatedly, by two people who had calculated exactly how much silence they needed to maintain in order to keep their secret comfortable. Divya apologized repeatedly for not telling me sooner, explaining that she had hoped it would end on its own, that she didn't want to be the reason for a family falling apart. But watching me continue to trust Arjun so completely, watching Amma continue to praise her son's kindness toward Kavita without any idea what that kindness had actually become, it had become too much for Divya to carry silently any longer. I thanked her, I meant it deeply. Because in a story full of people choosing silence to protect themselves, Divya chose honesty to protect me, even though it meant potentially damaging her relationship with her own sister. I asked her for the messages and photos she had seen. She hesitated, understandably worried about betraying her sister's privacy even further, but eventually agreed to share screenshots she had saved, explaining she'd kept them originally only in case she ever needed proof to convince Kavita to stop. That evening, sitting alone in my car outside that cafe, I looked through those messages for the first time. 2 years of affection disguised as property assistance. 2 years of "I miss you already" texts disguised as professional check-ins. 2 years of a relationship built entirely within the safety of a family that trusted both of them completely. I didn't cry in that car. I felt something different, a strange, heavy stillness, like watching a house you built slowly revealing termites in every wall you thought was solid. I drove home that night and looked at Arjun differently for the first time in 9 years. Not with rage yet, with calculation. Because I understood something important in that moment. If Arjun had spent 2 years carefully managing his lies within the protective walls of his own family, then those same family walls were about to become the exact place where his lies would finally collapse. I want to be honest about something. In the days following Divya's confession, I considered confronting Arjun privately more times than I can count. It would have been easier, quieter, less painful for everyone involved, at least on the surface. But I kept coming back to one thought. Arjun hadn't just betrayed me privately. He had betrayed an entire family's trust, his mother's pride in him, his father's respect for him, the family's collective belief that he was someone worth admiring. If I confronted him alone in private, there was a real risk he would simply deny everything, discredit Divya's account, twist the story until I looked like the one causing unnecessary drama in a loving family. I needed the truth to be undeniable, not just to me, but to the very people whose approval mattered most to him. I spent the next month building a careful, thorough record of everything. I saved every screenshot Divya gave me in multiple secure locations. I began quietly documenting Arjun's own behavioral patterns, dates and times of his late client meetings, cross-referenced against actual client records I discreetly verified through mutual industry contacts. I even reached out gently to two of his colleagues under the guise of casual conversation, learning that several property meetings he claimed to attend didn't actually appear on his office's shared calendar at all. Piece by piece, the picture became undeniable. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't jealousy. This was a carefully constructed, years-long deception hiding in plain sight within a family that loved him unconditionally. During this month of quiet investigation, I continued attending family gatherings as if nothing had changed. I laughed at Arjun's stories. I helped Amma in the kitchen. I hugged Kavita warmly at the next family function, even though every part of me wanted to scream the truth into that hug. People often ask me how I managed that kind of composure. The answer is simple. I wasn't protecting Arjun anymore. I was protecting my own plan, because I understood that the moment I revealed what I knew impulsively in anger, I would lose control of how the truth was received. And I refused to let that happen. I decided the reveal needed to happen in front of the one audience that mattered more to Arjun than anyone else in his life. His own family, together in the place where his reputation as the good son had been built over decades. The perfect opportunity arrived naturally. Amma and Papa's 40th wedding anniversary celebration just 6 weeks away. The entire extended family would be there. Nearly 60 relatives, including Kavita and Divya, gathering to celebrate 4 decades of a marriage the whole family considered a symbol of loyalty and commitment. It was painfully and perfectly the exact stage where the truth about loyalty needed to be told. I spent those 6 weeks preparing meticulously. I organized every piece of evidence into a clear, simple timeline. Nothing exaggerated, nothing dramatized, just dates, messages, and verified facts laid out plainly. I decided I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't create a scene filled with screaming and accusations. I would simply present the truth calmly and let the family, the same family that had built its identity around loyalty and honesty, decide for themselves what to do with it. Divya, after much thought, agreed to stand beside me if needed, though she made it clear she hoped it wouldn't come to a dramatic confrontation. I told her I understood completely, and that whatever happened, I would never blame her for telling me the truth. The night before the anniversary celebration, I sat in our bedroom, watching Arjun get ready for what he believed would simply be another warm family gathering. He hummed while ironing his shirt, mentioned how much he was looking forward to seeing everyone, even joked about how proud his parents would be showing off 40 years of doing it right. I smiled and said quietly, "Everyone's going to learn a lot tomorrow." He laughed, assuming I meant something sentimental about the anniversary. He had no idea how literally true that sentence actually was. The anniversary celebration was held in the family's favorite banquet hall, the same venue where Arjun and I had celebrated our own wedding reception 9 years earlier. The decorations were elegant but simple, reflecting Amma and Papa's humble values despite everyone's deep respect for them. Golden banners read, "40 years of love and loyalty," across the main stage. Nearly 60 relatives filled the hall, cousins who'd flown in from other cities, elderly aunts and uncles who rarely left their hometowns for anything less important, childhood friends of Amma and Papa who had watched their marriage grow from the very beginning. Kavita arrived with her parents, greeting everyone warmly, completely unaware that within hours, her secret would no longer belong only to her and Arjun. Throughout the evening, Arjun moved through the crowd exactly as I expected, charming, warm, playing the beloved son perfectly, receiving compliments about what a wonderful husband and family man he had become. Every compliment landed on me like a small, quiet blade, knowing what I knew. Around 8 p.m., the formal program began. Speeches from close family friends. A slideshow of 40 years of photographs, Amma and Papa as young newlyweds, raising their children, watching those children marry and build their own families. The room was filled with genuine warmth and emotion, tears of happiness from relatives who had witnessed this family's journey for decades. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the traditional segment where children and their spouses were invited to share a few words honoring the anniversary couple. Arjun, as the eldest son, was asked to speak first. He walked up to the small stage, microphone in hand, and delivered a beautifully composed speech about loyalty, commitment, and the example his parents had set for him throughout his life. "My parents taught me that real love means honesty, even when honesty is difficult," he said, his voice thick with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "They taught me that a family's strength comes from trust, and I've tried to build my own marriage and my own life around those same values." The room applauded warmly. Amma wiped a tear from her eye, looking at her son with immense pride. I walked toward the stage. Arjun smiled at me, assuming, just as before, that I was joining him for a sentimental moment, perhaps to add a few loving words of my own about our marriage in honor of his parents. He had no idea that the moment he mentioned honesty as a family value was about to become the exact moment his own dishonesty was revealed to everyone he loved most. I gently took the microphone from his hand. The room, still warm from his speech, waited expectantly, smiling, ready for another heartfelt moment. "Arjun just spoke beautifully about honesty," I began, my voice calm and clear. "And I agree completely. A family's strength does come from trust. Which is why I think everyone here deserves the truth about how that trust has actually been treated over the last 2 years." I saw Arjun's smile freeze in place, his eyes darting toward me, confusion quickly shifting into visible alarm. "Mira," he said quietly, stepping toward me, "let's not do this right now, not here." "I think this is exactly the right place," I said gently but firmly, holding the microphone steady. "Because everyone in this room has spent years believing in the kind of man you are. I think they deserve to know the full truth, not just the version you've been performing." I glanced toward Divya, who gave me a small, steady nod of support from where she stood near the back. I continued, keeping my voice level despite the storm building inside me. For the past 2 years, while helping Kavita with her property matters, Arjun built a relationship with her that went far beyond friendship or family support. Late-night meetings that weren't about paperwork. Client dinners that never happened, according to his own office records. Messages and moments I have documented clearly, not out of anger, but because I needed to understand the truth for myself before standing here tonight. The hall fell into stunned silence. I saw Amma's face shift from confusion to horror as the pieces connected in her mind. The late nights helping Kavita she herself had mentioned to me weeks earlier, now taking on an entirely different meaning. I saw Papa's expression harden, his jaw tightening as he looked at his son. I saw Kavita, standing near her parents, her face draining of color as every eye in the room slowly turned toward her. "I'm not here to destroy this celebration," I continued, my voice softening slightly though remaining steady. Amma and Papa deserve every bit of the love and respect this room has shown them tonight. 40 years of genuine loyalty is worth celebrating. I simply couldn't stand on this stage and let that word loyalty be spoken without also speaking the truth. I turned to Arjun directly, who stood frozen, his earlier composed confidence completely shattered. You spoke about honesty being a family value tonight, I said quietly. So here it is, I know everything, and so does everyone else now. I placed the microphone back gently, thanked Amma and Papa specifically for 40 years of genuine love that deserved far better than what their son had done, and walked calmly off the stage, leaving behind a silence so complete that even the soft background music seemed to fade into nothing. What happened in the hours immediately following that moment wasn't dramatic shouting or physical chaos. It was something quieter, and in many ways far more powerful: an entire extended family together in one room, collectively processing a truth none of them had seen coming. Amma didn't yell at her son. She simply walked toward me, tears streaming down her face, and hugged me tightly in front of everyone. I am so sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry I didn't see it sooner. Papa, a man known throughout the community for his calm, measured demeanor, approached Arjun quietly and asked him to step outside with him. I don't know exactly what was said between them in the parking lot that night, but when Arjun returned nearly 20 minutes later, his face was pale, his earlier confidence completely gone. Kavita's parents, devastated and embarrassed, quietly gathered their family and left the celebration early, apologizing repeatedly to Amma and Papa, though Amma gently told them, "This isn't about blame tonight. Let's just be honest with each other going forward." Several relatives came to speak with me individually over the following hour, some offering quiet support, others simply expressing shock, a few admitting they had noticed small signs themselves but never wanted to believe them. Divya stayed close to me the entire evening, occasionally squeezing my hand reassuringly, grateful, I think, that the truth had finally been spoken by someone other than herself. The anniversary celebration ended earlier than planned that night, but not in the chaotic, scandal-driven way one might expect. Instead, it ended with something unexpectedly meaningful: dozens of family members quietly reaffirming to each other, and to Amma and Papa specifically, that honesty, even when painful, was worth protecting more than any comfortable silence. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects moved through the family slowly but surely. Arjun's relationship with his parents changed permanently, not through dramatic disownment, but through a quiet, deep disappointment that never fully healed. Papa, in particular, struggled to look at his son the same way again, often reminding him gently but firmly that respect, once broken publicly, takes far longer to rebuild than it ever took to lose. Kavita's family distanced themselves from ours almost entirely. The decades-long friendship between our families reduced to occasional polite nods at community events. Kavita herself moved to a different city within the year, according to relatives, seeking a fresh start away from the judgment that inevitably followed her within our shared social circles. Arjun tried for several weeks to convince me privately that we could rebuild our marriage, that the affair had meant nothing real, that his family's reaction had been punishment enough for his mistakes. But here's something I came to understand clearly during those weeks. A man who spends 2 years constructing a secret life doesn't get to decide, after being caught, how much punishment is enough. I filed for divorce 3 months after that anniversary celebration. Arjun didn't contest it. Amma, surprisingly, remained close to me even after the divorce was finalized, telling me on more than one occasion, "You will always be my daughter, Mira." that never depended on my son's mistakes. That relationship, the one bond in this entire story that survived completely intact, became one of the most meaningful outcomes of everything that happened. Leaving a marriage is difficult. Leaving a marriage that comes with an entire extended family you've genuinely loved for 9 years is a different kind of difficult altogether. I moved out of the home Arjun and I shared 6 months after the anniversary celebration, into a small 2-bedroom apartment closer to my own parents. I remember unpacking boxes late one night, finding an old photograph from my wedding day. The entire Malhotra family gathered around me, smiling, welcoming me into their world. I sat on the floor holding that photograph for a long time, not with anger, but with a strange kind of grief for the family bond I had genuinely cherished, even though the marriage itself had been built on a foundation I never fully understood. Divya and I remained close throughout that year, our friendship growing even stronger through everything we had navigated together. She often told me how relieved she felt, finally free of the secret she had carried alone for months before confiding in me. "I should have told you sooner," she said once. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage." I told her something I truly believed. Courage doesn't have a deadline. It simply has to arrive before the silence causes permanent damage. And hers arrived exactly when it needed to. Amma continued calling me every few weeks, just as she had during my marriage, checking in, sharing family updates, occasionally sending photos of family gatherings I no longer attended, but still felt connected to through her. It became clear to me that the love Amma had given me over the years wasn't conditional on her son's behavior. It was simply who she was as a person, independent of anyone else's mistakes. A year after the divorce, I ran into an old family friend at a community event, someone who had been present at the anniversary celebration that night. She approached me gently and said, "Mira, I want you to know what you did that night. It wasn't about revenge." It felt like watching someone finally choose truth over comfort, for everyone's sake, not just your own. I thanked her, though inside I knew the truth was more complicated than that. Yes, I had chosen honesty over comfortable silence. But I had also chosen myself, my own dignity, my own right to a life built on something real rather than something carefully performed. I started focusing on my career more intentionally that year, taking on projects I had previously hesitated to pursue while managing the demands of a large family life. I reconnected with old friends outside the Malhotra family circle, rebuilding a version of my social world that didn't revolve entirely around being someone's wife or someone's daughter-in-law. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely, I began rebuilding an identity that belonged entirely to me. If there's one thing this entire experience taught me, it's this: loyalty performed in public means nothing if it isn't practiced in private. For years, I admired Arjun's charm, his warmth with family, his ability to make every gathering feel special. I mistook that performance for genuine character. It took Amma's innocent slip of information, Divya's difficult courage, and my own quiet investigation to understand the difference between someone who talks about loyalty beautifully and someone who actually lives it. I don't regret exposing the truth the way I did. Some might say a family celebration wasn't the right place for such a reveal, but I've come to believe something important: Arjun didn't choose that place. He chose, 2 years earlier, to build his secret within the protective walls of a family celebration culture that valued appearances deeply. I simply chose to let the truth exist within those same walls, rather than protecting his comfort at the expense of my own integrity. To anyone listening who suspects something isn't right in their own family, in their own marriage, Trust the small inconsistencies you notice, even when they come from the most unexpected, well-meaning sources. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive through dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through an innocent comment from someone who loves you, who has no idea they're handing you the very first thread of something much larger. And if you ever find yourself holding a truth large enough to change everything, remember this. You don't have to choose between protecting a family's peace and protecting your own honesty. Sometimes, real peace can only exist after the truth has finally been spoken, however uncomfortable that truth may be in the moment. Amma taught me without ever intending to that love and loyalty aren't about protecting comfortable lies. They're about choosing honesty even when it costs you something deeply personal. She lost the comfortable image of her son that night, but she gained something more valuable, a daughter-in-law who trusted her enough to let the truth exist between them, rather than quietly disappearing into silence. I don't hate Arjun anymore. I've made peace with the fact that some people are simply more comfortable performing values than actually living them. What I carry forward instead is gratitude for Divya's courage, for Amma's unconditional love, for my own willingness to seek clarity rather than remain comfortable in uncertainty. If this story resonated with you, remember, the truth rarely announces itself loudly and immediately. It arrives in small pieces, through unexpected people, in ordinary moments you might almost overlook. The real question isn't whether you'll eventually receive those pieces. The real question is whether you'll have the courage to put them together and the strength to speak clearly once you do. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us for more true stories of betrayal, family, and the quiet courage it takes to choose truth over silence.